It's another Manly Monday, and if you hear a strange sound, Scout is in my lap, purring very loudly, and I noticed that it picked up on the microphone, right, Scouty boy? Yes. Ooh, gotta turn that down. Okay, so as you see on the title of this video, we're gonna talk about, is it criticism or is it, a suggestion to fix it? And this was actually inspired by I've been watching a lot of King of the Hill, a lot of Downton Abbey because my cat Link loves it, but also King of the Hill. And it's that ongoing yep, 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 like all four guys. And the whole thing about shared activity, male socialization, where everybody's around the barbecue or the car or something else and offering helpful suggestions about how to do it. And this is something that is not similarly replicated in the way women tend to socialize. And I know this because, I the bulk of my friends are male. But then whenever, this time of year, when you're over in someone's house and you're expected to offer to help with something in the kitchen, and when you go there, you do it their way. You don't make helpful suggestions about how they could be doing something better if you want to stay friends. It is very, very different. But there is this odd thing that what is considered, there goes Scouty, what is considered critical to one group of people is considered helpful to another. And what is simply an observation to some people can sound like criticism to another group. And this seems to be a major stumbling block, not just between men and women, but between different types of men. I've noticed that in a lot of online discussions that what one group considers fair criticism, somebody else will consider an unhelpful personal attack. And I did a bit of research on this and discovered there is no useful, functional, applicable, common definition of criticism. So here we go on Manly Monday. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy, oh, there we go, a one-time Leanna Care session for someone can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. And yes, I am still coughing while I talk about coffee. I was wrong last week. Discord invites go up this week. I always do it after the 5th of the month because that's when the Patreon money actually comes in. Okay, so criticism, according to just sort of the dictionary definition, which is a shitty place to start, but also easy, is criticism, the expression of disapproval of someone or something based on perceived faults or mistakes. 2, the analysis and judgment of the merits and faults of a literary or artistic work. Now, you can see the difference, the problem right here, right? Because the expression of disapproval of someone versus the analysis and judgment of the merits and faults of a work, right? This tends to be the line where most experts separate critique and criticism, I'm currently working on something. I don't know if I'll get it done by tomorrow, but this trend I've noticed in video games this year of grief-stricken female antagonist with no face, covered by hair. I've noticed that this is a thing in more than one game this year. And it's like, what's going on? Because you don't tend to see very little fleshing out male antagonist with no face. But when you get women, all of a sudden, oh, she's just sad and that's why she's crazy. But like, is this a criticism or is this an observation? You know, I'm not saying, and of course it's a trope. So video games have this charge of, you know, tropes versus women. And that's what I don't like about that entire premise is a trope just exists. It's neither good or bad. It can be used effectively, or it can be used to dodge a writing challenge that, you know, a team did not feel like they had the life experience or skill to tackle. And so, you know, they tried to pull a George R.R. Martin, and women like babies, right? And then they go crazy, and that's their two primary motivators, you know, or they're Lady Stoneheart. And you have to sort of unwoman before a woman can have complex motivations. And that's what I'm working on. Like I said, I don't know if I'll be able to get it done for tomorrow. But it is interesting to me. But that does not mean that any game I bring up in that is a bad game. But the entire time I was a games journalist, people would freak the fuck out. And they were primarily men that did this. You know, if you critiqued, you know, if you said this is good, this was not so good in a game they liked. And one of the worst franchises for it was Halo. I remember I reviewed Halo 3 and gave it an 8 out of 10, which for me is a buy it, right? But I didn't give it a 10 out of 10. And oh God, the personal attacks just poured in. And I was like, what the hell? You know, this is objectively a very phoned in campaign. Now, if you play it predominantly for multiplayer, hey, the Forge is great. But if you want a meaningful single player campaign, more like what you got in Halo 1 or 2, this ain't that. And that was my job. But it seemed that the Halo mega fans of the time couldn't separate look, this is just my job to help people spend their dollars wisely. Therefore, I am going to, you know, emphasize the cautions so that the right people can spend the money on a game and, you know, feel like they made an informed purchase. Instead, they equated this with a personal attack on an element of their identity. And, you know, that was my second experience with people taking a comment about a game like a personal attack. The first was World of Warcraft, where I said at the time, it's inexcusable that a game this successful doesn't have a noob zone. You know, like, you've got your early install base, you got to get more players in, and this was right before it turned out that, you know, all those Chinese players in WoW were paying pennies on the dollar to inflate their player stats. And now, WoW has a really good starter zone for both Horde and Alliance. I was ahead of my time, but oh my God, did I get ripped for that. So what's going on here? There are, and you know, obviously I picked these franchises because, you know, predominantly male player base. WoW might be more balanced now, but at the time it was, you know, Halo, WoW. Both both above average numbers of female players for their genres, but still overwhelmingly male player bases, right? And stuff has become our identity. And so it's really difficult to separate bad thing or thing I didn't like versus bad person or person I didn't like. And this makes identifying and being aware of how critical someone is coming across extra challenging, right? Because if there's this blurred line between the thing and someone's personal identity, well, it's very hard to find an agreed upon safe zone to say, hey, this is my opinion. It might be different from yours, but it's what I really believe, versus shitting on something. And I have noticed this habit that I don't know if it's an internet thing, if it's a gamer thing, if it's like, I had a conversation absolutely go to shit and have a guy spin out on me where he decided to start a conversation with people he didn't know very well by coming in and just shitting on Dragon Age the Veilguard. And I dared to say, well, I've actually been pretty public about the fact that I actually enjoyed that game. And this guy just spun out. The conversation just lost its hinge and never found it again. And I didn't care that he didn't like the game. I was just going to honestly say that, I did. And I asked him how much of it, I said, did you actually play the game? Well, I tried it and refunded it. I said, okay, so you didn't get out of the early hours of play. Well, no. Well, that's the worst part of the game. That's the least polished, and depending on the, the origin, the faction you choose. I mean, shit, I played as the Veil Jumpers, but it's a Scottish accent, so it's the Veil Jumpers, Jumpers, but it was fucking broken. Like, it was just, the dialogue paths were janky, and it was so dissonant, and I'm so good at picking the thing that is gonna break the fucking game, because I don't like to do like the basic Becky build. I like to do something a little like, okay, I've already played Grey Warden, and I've already played I don't even remember the other factions. So I was like waffling between Soldiers of Fortune and Veil Jumpers, and went with the Veil Jumpers. But yeah, it was fucking broken. And once you get out of that very faction heavy kind of tutorial mode, the game gets a lot better. And so, okay, the person had an opinion based on early hours of play, and that, somebody with more wisdom would have recognized, if you haven't had the entire experience, you go in and say, I played about 8 hours of the game and I didn't like it, so I refunded it, instead of going, that game's trash. But that level of emotional maturity doesn't exist in gaming, nor am I learning does it exist in the world in general. People have been trained, male socialized people have been trained to do this. Women are trained to be passive aggressive, right? Or men raised in female environments, or with, very dominant feminine influences, are taught the art of passive aggression and saying something that to people not who haven't been trained to have an ear sound like they're saying something nice, but it is really the opposite of nice. What they just said was horrible in plain sight, but that's why they call it a dog whistle, right? But men are raised in this hypercritical environment and never given permission to go, can you not, like, go so hard on it? Like, you don't like it. That's okay. But do you have to say it's bad? Oh, no, quite the opposite. No. Men go through 4-year college degrees where you have to just pound the table and say everything is shit, and that's how you get a good grade. And then, you go out into the corporate world and everybody's telling you you're shit and get used to it. And I actually described working in the media like that on the Ed and Red podcast last week. I said that, if you want to work in the media, expect to be horribly underpaid, do all the shit nobody else wants to do, and be told everything you do is wrong, nothing you do is right, even when it is right. And after 5 years of that, if you still want to work in the industry, you might make it. That is what it's like. And yeah, is that harsh? Yeah. Do I recommend careers in the media? No, not really. It's much better to just sort of get a TikTok and get a YouTube and talk about what you want to, and occasionally deal with horrendous, wretched, gaping assholes than have to deal with horrendous, wretched, gaping assholes all the time. That is conventional media. Just saying. And that is why because I work with people, trying to, get better for them personally in my main job now. And it's very rewarding, but I have to be very careful not to go too hard on the criticism. Sometimes I do have to get critical, right? For their own good, be careful when you call a woman a bitch to another woman. They're gonna remember, especially why you labeled that woman a bitch. And, guys aren't terribly impressed when guys talk that way, but for the most part, that's not every woman is going to have a horrible reaction. Just some are. So you're going to want to watch that. Some people read that as criticism instead of a suggestion. Similarly, hey, are you sure you know what you're doing talking to a 15-year-old in DMs on Discord? Some people will read that as criticism. Other people will see that as concern, right? Another example, if you talk to people that way, many people find that rude, or please don't talk to me that way. I don't like that. Now, that is not letter of the law criticism. Some people will take it that way because you're asking them to alter their behavior. And this is when things get challenging, because if you've got a person, and a lot of women are taught the opposite of what's healthy. What's healthy is, did a bad thing does not mean you're a bad person. Women are actively taught, no, if you do anything bad or imperfect, you are shit and useless, and no men will ever want you. You are imperfect and therefore not hot. Just give up now, go be a nun, or get a bunch of cats. I have a bunch of cats, but I stand by that. No, seriously, that is, if you wonder why women have responses that you don't get, it is that. Women are taught that, ironically, the same thing that men that the manosphere tells men. You know the whole 80-20 thing, that 80% of women go for 20% of men? Well, that's what women are basically taught, that men just want the, Kimbo Kardashian type. I say that as a trope, not Kim herself. Kim Kardashian is a complex person that isn't just the way she looks, but she is heavily surgically altered. Waists like that do not exist in nature. You look at the Kardashian girls, you've seen how their faces have altered over the years. A lot of women are sent the message that men only want that. Anything else is settling. No, they don't really want they're not interested in your brains. You have to be good enough to be a status symbol, but not better than a guy at anything they care about, or then you are not hot. So girls dumb down. And then they get very frustrated that they have to dumb down, and that comes out in really weird ways. Never approach a man and express interest in them, because then you are desperate or crazy, because any hot woman doesn't have to work to get men interested in them. They can just exist in a state of hot, and men will just throw themselves at them. No, seriously, this is what women are raised to believe. Women will deny it, but they're lying to themselves. I thought this got better, but in talking to Gen Z women about why they don't date, I'm not up to guys' standards. Guys want the Instagram influencers. They all do. I watch them do it. But also, any guy who's interested in me probably isn't really interested in me. They're just a predator looking to abuse me. Because no guy will be interested in me. I'm not hot. And this is my issue with the whole hot woman thing. It's a very, very narrow box, right? It's very small. And you might be sitting here going, well, that's not true. Exactly. So if what the bullshit women are being fed isn't true, well, consider that those manosphere videos, the dating advice videos that you've been fed, those are probably crap too. And what those videos do, like, I've watched manosphere videos, and I am stunned. I'm not even a guy on the outside. I'm playing Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader right now. Oh my god. It's hilarious. I'm like, yes! The Emperor protects. It's exactly what I'm in the mood for right now. But, oh my god, I'm such an asshole. But, watching these manosphere videos, you feel like shit when you're done. The running down of echoing all the shitty things your biggest bully has ever said to you about weakness and laziness and wasting your time playing video games and all that shit. Like, it hurts because someone's already said it to you, and if you hear it enough, a part of you thinks it's true, but it's highly subjective. But if you're watching a ton of this content because you have to handle criticism, you have to improve yourself, well, anything, the object of your attraction says that sounds remotely like that is going to hit like a hammer in terms of criticism. And I see guys do this. And they don't realize they're doing it because they honestly think they have been deeply criticized because of neutral statements. And because they were in such deep pain based on a comment that was not intended as criticism, but landed as criticism, because some men are very, very uniquely sensitive to criticism from women. because of gender roles and because it feels like an inability to be tough or manly or protect or provide or weakness or whatever, it lands as criticism. It hurts really badly. Guys have been 100% taught to avoid feeling hurt because hurt is weakness. It's not. And 0% taught how to handle being hurt. So the guy just becomes a caged animal and lashes out at the woman who didn't say anything that terrible. I didn't mind the veil guard, really. I actually had fun with the last 2/3 of that game. Get her. And if you have experienced something similar from women, walk the process back. It's similar for people who have not just low self-esteem, but their constructed self is all the stuff they're shit at. Nothing that they can say. You don't have to be the absolute best at something to go, I am reasonably good at this. You know, I've done enough of this stuff and heard from enough people that, yeah, that worked. That spoke to me. You 100% describe the thing I didn't understand why my girlfriend did. I'm reasonably good at this. You know? So when somebody tells me I'm shit at it, I know they're talking out their ass. You know? There's just certain things, especially about intent, right? And if you're walking around terrified all the time, if you're walking around waiting to be found out and constantly guarding against attacks, you don't have the resilience. You don't have the distress tolerance in reserve to get a piece of criticism and go, that's their opinion, they're wrong. And people are like, yeah, but what do I do about that? Well, one, you have to stop subjecting yourself to criticism, right? If those TikToks you're watching, those YouTube videos, you know, those Instagrams are making you feel bad, do what I do. My freaking Instagram is trained with my friends' content and then opossums and raccoons and capybaras and bats, and those make me feel good, right? You are not required to choke on criticism. It's about taking something, one thing that you're going to work on at a time, and go, this feels right. I do have to work on this, you know? And focusing on that, setting achievable, measurable goals with that, and moving towards that so you can see the progress. If you're trying to fix 7 things at once, it's not going to work. So if you are working on, say, you know, learning to talk to people better or start conversations better, right? Or be able to continue conversations longer. That's all you're working on in that time frame. Because otherwise, too many variables, you don't know what went wrong. And otherwise, you know, I've had times where somebody shits on me and I actually think they could be totally 100% right about that, but I can't think about that right now because it's not top 3 priority. And if it's not top 3 priority right now, it's gonna have to wait. And that is honestly how you get stronger, how you get more resilient. You prioritize what you're going to work on. You prioritize sources of criticism you will listen to because those people have your best interests at heart. That manosphere content creator does not have your best interests at heart. Their interest is in keeping you miserable and teaching you things that are going to backfire. So you go running back to them because they've softened you up to think you're the problem and you need their further assistance. they don't make money off of you doing better. You know, they make money by you continuing to need their advice. And that's true of a lot of the self-help sphere. And this is why I haven't done a book yet, because I'm trying to figure out how to. It's not that kind of self-help book, right? And I haven't figured out a formula to differentiate myself from all that other stuff. Because that's why, personal coaching or peer counseling like I do, that's why it's different. Because if somebody doesn't feel like they're getting results, like the reason I don't do you have to pay me $5,000 and then you get my services for 6 months, is I work on the fact that people meet with me, they work with me, they see improvements, they see it's working, and so they continue to pay for my services. That massive investment off the top, one, people are really going to expect a lot. Two, $5,000, that's a lot of money up front. And then it's 6 months that they can't do anything. And that is true of a lot of dating services as well that do it that way, like matchmaking services. Oh, you'll pay thousands of dollars for a year and we'll guarantee you this many, but then there's a whole bunch of loopholes. And people are sick of this crap, right? And honestly, that's really what it's about. If something stings, one technique that I think I saw this on CNBC, I could be wrong, but I'll tell you what I do, and then I'll tell you the CNBC version, and you can pick the one that works for you. If something stings, and it's like, ugh, I feel like I've just been punched, I make myself name the feeling before I react externally. So it's like, what am I feeling? I feel angry. Is that quite right? What's underneath the anger? That hurt. That felt unfair. I'm feeling a deep sense of unfairness. This person should know me better than what they just accused me of. What they said is not true. Okay, so I believe it's not true. That's why it feels unfair. There we go. You got to get that before you can respond and not make an epic mess of it. Because what do you do then? Will you do little tests to see if somebody's coming at you fairly? And, what I tend to do is go, look, I accept that it felt deliberate from your point of view, just for instance, right? That tends to be the big thing, that somebody suggests I did something deliberately, when, dear God, no. It is not worth it to me to deliberately hurt someone. I think it is a stupid tactic. I say plenty of things that accidentally hurt people. Why the fuck would I do it deliberately? Right? It just doesn't make any sense. A bad use of time. I don't want to be that. Not only do I not want to be that person, being that person doesn't make any sense to me. So if somebody says I did something deliberately, and I know I didn't, I will say to them, look, I accept that that's how it felt to you, but I know what was in my head, and it was not deliberate. So please stop saying that. If they do, okay, then the conversation can continue. If they go back to it, well, now they're knowingly doing something that I asked them not to do. And I told them why, because it's not true. So, 1, bad faith. 2, hypocritical, because they're doing something that they now know upsets me, meaning they've lost the moral high ground in their original criticism, right? 2 wrongs don't make a right. There's no point if they think they can do something that's wrong when I do it, right? That makes it real simple. And that makes it real simple to know when the conversation is no longer productive. That's my version. The version I saw online is when something hurts, just say, ow, to give yourself that pause. The goal is to give yourself a pause to process the gut punch before you react, because that's how you prevent that caged animal lashing out response, right? You have it kind of internally and you give it a few minutes for the intensity to kind of dissipate. Now, what can happen sometimes is it starts getting bigger, right? Instead of feeling less ow, it starts feeling more ow. This is where I have found my walking through it and having a bit of a conversation with myself works better than the ow technique. And one thing I am working on now is walking away sooner. I've rebalanced. So this is something I'm working on right now based on criticism I've gotten from other people. I let conversations go on too long because I'm trying to give the other people maximum opportunities to stop fucking up. And I've realized that that is giving people too many opportunities to fuck me over. You know, how many leaked portions of chat logs are going to end up on the internet before I realize, stop giving people the fucking chat log, right? Like it just, enough. And does that mean some people are going to get cut off too early? Yes, it does. I deserve an element of self-preservation, right? And this is why I say, if you feel like the person keeps picking at you and needling you and criticizing you and won't stop, walk away. It's not weakness. It's not. It's the strongest move you can make because you're giving them nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm a person who believes that, good solid relationships are worth fighting for. And as long as people are talking, there's hope. But I've had to learn that, I gotta stop hoping sooner. Especially for men, especially in this era of the accusation that you have to, actively disprove instead of innocent until proven guilty. Not giving someone the ammo is the best bet. So just say to them, what you're saying about my motivations is not true. I am ending this conversation because of that. If you would like to retract the accusation, we can continue. But I will not continue a conversation based on a false assertion, and walk away. If they keep saying, yes, it is true. Yes, it is true. Yes, it is true. They are baiting you, okay? And that is a red flag. And plenty of women do it. I know, because they watch mom do it to dad or whatever. But it's wrong. And if they keep insisting that you have had motivations that you do not have, that is not the same as explaining to you the impact it had on them. You can have the best of intentions and still foul something up for someone. But if they are adamant that you had an intention, that you did something on purpose, not negligently, not you need to learn to think it through a little better, but you did it on purpose, and that's not true, walk away. No good will come from the conversation. That is not fair criticism. And a lot of guys stay in those false accusation fights because they've been trained by watching dad do it. And dad just get berated until he snapped, right? And then dad got in trouble. Or other male family members, or they had to sit through it through an older woman who was in a position of authority over you. And that's an important cycle to break. Because until you feel like you can walk away, that criticism is just going to feel like a critical hit. every single time because it makes you feel powerless. It makes you feel helpless. Recognizing you can walk away, maybe not forever, just for a little while, gives you your power back. Being able to say that's not true gives you your power back. It's very important for you to feel like you still have some control of the way the conversation is going to go if you're ever going to be truly good at handling criticism instead of just being the internet version of being good at handling criticism, which is being terrible at it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching. Right there it is. Thanks for watching Manly Mondays. Only 2 cups. This one. Yes, I'm getting better. Thanks for watching.